and further to this morning's deputation on the same subject. Good afternoon, Council. This paper outlines the background to the position of seeking endorsement and approval of the Midlothian Local Development Plan 2, or MLDP2, evidence report and associated documents for submission to Scottish Ministers for gate check, noting that the indicative local housing land requirement, the LHLR, agreed by Planning Committee at its meeting on the 4th of June, will be included in the evidence report submitted for gate check. It also appends the participation report and children and young persons participation report, illustrating the level of engagement and participation of communities. This paper seeks endorsement and approval of submission of these reports to Scottish Ministers for the gate check as well. Council has also recommended to note that a call for ideas for MLDP2 will be undertaken during July to October. Members will recall that at its meeting on the 4th of June, Planning Committee set the local housing land requirement at the additional generosity of 9,001 to 11,000 level, subject to criteria. As set out in the report to Planning Committee, that criteria are: any new allocations incorporate a higher than 25% affordable housing provision and homes which are marketed for the first-time buyers and the elderly. Those settlements in Midlothian that have had the greatest scale of growth since the adoption of the 2017 MLDP, such as Bonnyrigg and Roslin, for example, are safeguarded against further allocations. Any new allocations must fully fund any required new infrastructure without financial detriment to the Council, and any new allocations must demonstrate a direct economic and employment benefit to Midlothian. If the stated criteria are not met, the LHLR shall be set at 8,850 to 9,000 in line with the NPF4 minimum all-tenure housing land requirement, or MAFLR, figure. Council has recommended to approve the MLDP2 evidence report and associated documents, which includes the Planning Committee set LHLR and the appended participation reports for submission to Scottish Government for gate check to continue the progress of the Midlothian Local Development Plan 2. Thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Provost. I didn't speak on this earlier. I thought it would be best to leave it to the appropriate point. Can I thank officers for all the time that they've taken, the kind of member briefings. I know that I sent you all a whole list of questions yesterday and such like as well. And I do want to thank the community councils and the Federation of Community Councils for their engagement, but I did want to touch back on the evidence point earlier. And I guess it's just a point to say that when councillors make decisions, we don't always make them, or we don't vote a certain way or make a decision a certain way because we don't understand what's going on. Some people might not like the decision that we reach, but we do so for a variety of different reasons. And I think this decision in particular, and I know this has been raised by all or some members in all political groups, I think there was some concern about some of the legalities around prejudice and quasi-judicial parts of this as well. And I certainly had a whole load of questions around housing supply, around the impact on renters, the capacity to add additional social housing, and the numbers I think was one of my concerns as well as developer contributions, but particularly the legal aspects, because I think we've seen before, disappointingly, that members in this council have found themselves being punitively treated for, you know, in my opinion, carrying out their job. So I think that's really helpful to where we've got to, and I think we probably have got to a point, you know, where we all appreciate the increasing demands on our infrastructure, the fact that we, you know, need extra funding for infrastructure. And I think there's an argument to be had around, you know, we build houses and we've built, you know, a lot of houses, and the infrastructure hasn't kept up with that. And there's a debate there to be had to say, have we built too many houses, or is the infrastructure funding just not kept up with it? So there's a debate to be had there. And I'm sure people will have lots of opinions, but I just wanted to put my own thoughts and reflections on record. So I hope we can probably find a point of consensus today around looking at the kind of smaller number. One of the points that I wanted to make sure was that if we went for the kind of smaller targets, that it wouldn't stop us from adding social housing onto that, and I think those assurances are there. So I'll leave it there. It's been a long day. I'm sure people have got lots to say about this, but thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Can I just check that you're moving? Did you say you were moving the report?
I'm happy to move the report. I know that people are going to have lots of discussions, so I don't want to preempt any of those. People might want to make their own personal judgments on it. I think I'm certainly very happy, and I've spoke to other councillors and other groups around looking at the minimum number. I think the concerns raised before was around kind of variations of that, but I think that's kind of where we are. But I'll leave it there and see how we go in the round. I'm happy to move the recommendations. That's probably where we'll get to, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Virgo, Councillor Milligan and then Councillor Pottinger. So Councillor Virgo, please.
Thanks, Provost. I'll do my best to keep it brief. I have no promises, but I'll do my best. My question, Derek, is around 3.2. And I'm maybe missing something. I'm hoping that I'm missing something. Otherwise, I'm not sure what it means. At the planning meeting, it was agreed to set the LHLR at the additional generosity, subject to those criteria. Are those criteria, though, not specific to developers coming with applications? Because obviously the item ends, the question section ends. If the stated criteria are not met, the LHLR shall be set at the option 1 as it was. And this is what I'm not understanding. Has it not been? Did the planning committee not agree to set it at the additional generosity? And if developers want, then they have those criterias to build within that capacity. How do those criteria? Why would those criteria change what the LHLR is, if that's actually been set by council?
Yep. Mr. Arnstoff, I think you can take that one.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I think the starting point is there's obviously an understanding of the volume of house building and the impact that has on communities and infrastructure. But the report was trying to the planning committee report was trying to balance that with the demand for affordable housing and additional development. So the proposal, which you're making reference to, was agreeing that additional volume of housing, but it was setting that criteria. How you secure that criteria is by then policies in the next plan. So if the elected members were agreeing to the higher figure subject to the criteria, when it comes to allocating sites and drafting policy in the next phase of the plan, then that's when you lock that in. At this stage, elected members have to commit to an indicative local housing land requirement, and it has to be MAFLR plus, MAFLR plus 1 or above, as it were. So the compromise position, which was referred to at Planning Committee, was those additional units, but only subject to that criteria. At this stage, you can do that, i.e. additional units subject to A, B and C, as long as your baseline is above the MAFLR figure.
Councillor Virgo.
Thank you. Sorry, so I'm still not getting, because the last sentence says, if the stated criteria are not met, but those are criteria that you're asking us to set based on what was in the planning. So if the planning decision was to go for additional generosity with those criteria, then that was the decision. I'm not seeing why, if the stated criteria are not met, then the LHLR should be set at a lower amount. That's the bit that I'm not getting, because it doesn't seem to follow the other.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, that was just the stick to use to ensure that as those sites come forward, there is that criteria in place. So no, I understand the point that could have been maybe phrased clearer, but that's the point to it, is that you set your basic MAFLR, then you've gone for your additional units, but it's only subject to those criteria. if those criteria aren't met, then obviously those sites don't come forward.
So Councillor Milligan, then Councillor Pottinger, then Councillor Smale. So Councillor Milligan, please.
Yeah, I agree with nearly 95% of what the council leader says there, that there's sometimes we take decisions and people, when we didn't agree with their version, they suddenly think that we didn't care what we're doing or we're not listening, or because one certain group comes in lobbying to turn left, we should automatically turn left because we're being lobbied. We're here to take decisions on all the information that's in front of us, and that's what we'll do. I think I was reasonably clear enough because we went to the briefings a lot in the committee room, as nearly every elected member did, and challenged. If there was any confusion in the room, it was maybe with elected members, because a lot of us thought that it was just the evidence-given stages and we weren't going to be asked to take that decision. And within that big pile of documents, if Councillor Virgo hadn't actually drew it out, we would have probably all missed the fact that we had been asked and the decision would have been taken as we were there. But I was quite clear, you know, when we talk about the new guidelines that officers are then working under, you know, constrained sites that didn't have any mitigating measures to bring them online can't be counted, so therefore the officers can't include them. No matter whether we would like them or the community councils would like them, the officer corps simply can't include them. Windfall sites, by their very nature, they're windfall sites. If you can, they're going to be coming forward, you include them in the plan. They're no longer a windfall site. A windfall site is a site that wasn't expected to come forward, and there always will be. When I look at social housing in this here, you're talking about just on the minimum number, as Councillor Parry talked about there, you would have over 2,000 social houses, 25%. 8,000, you'd have over 2,000 social housing sites that we could get. The problem we're going to have is just having the money to build out that amount. And even as we build them out, we have been building since 2006. As quick as we build the houses, the housing waiting list grows. It doesn't shrink, it never has. It was at 2,200, I think, when we started building council houses. And there is a need. When we look at the infrastructure, and that's a point that we've all been making for a long, long time, that the finance, not just to the council, to whether it's policing, health boards, public transport, you name it, just doesn't seem to follow that sheer growth. And that's been our problems. And it will continue to be our problems. I'd be quite happy to second Councillor Parry if she's moving this way, setting aside the Planning Committee's decision and actually going for the minimum growth that we need to take.
Thank you. Councillor Pottinger. And then Councillor Smale.
Yeah, I voted for option one, and my opinion is, you know, that we could have even done more on that paper. It was a very, very lengthy paper that came to planning, you know, and it was a lot to read and to get through. But when we read and we got through it all, the paper that was circulated from the Federation of Community Councils wasn't part of it. So we can only make a decision on all the information in front of us. So let's make sure that all the information is in front of us. So we would have had more on that mechanisms. Also, the implications in the paper for changing planning regulations, relaxation of planning regulations, to bring forward more sites, you know, to sites without environmental impact assessments or whatever kind of regulations that they're talking about, relaxation. I'd be against that. I think we should just keep the current plan regulations for the site identifications that we have just now as a policy. And I don't see anything wrong with the current way of doing that. And yes, yeah, the debate is, you know, what comes first, the infrastructure or the houses, you know, but, you know, the infrastructure has lagged behind the housing. And, you know, it's going to be difficult to redress that balance by anybody's calculations.
I just want to check there wasn't a question there, was it? It was just, you were just giving your opinion.
The question was me sort of repeating what I said at Performance and Scrutiny Committee, that the Federation of Community Councils paper should have been included in the planning papers that were presented to us at that planning committee meeting.
My understanding was that that was a response to the planning. So I'm just going to double check because you might be aware I was not at the planning meeting, but I'm going to check with Mr Arnstoff that that is the case, that it was in response to, so bear with me please.
Yes. The decision at PRS was to refer it to Annette Lang for closer working relationships with the Federation of Community Councils.
Mr Arnstoff.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, the paper that was presented to you this morning by the Community Councils came in after the Planning Committee report, after the preparation of the evidence report. So that was in response to that Planning Committee discussion. What I would say, however, Chair, in terms of the evidence report, there was substantial engagement with all the community councils and the Federation of Community Councils to get to that Planning Committee position. So they have been engaged, their views have been expressed. At the Planning Committee at the beginning of June, also elected members considered the local place plans which were drafted by the community councils and will be taken forward as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry, can I come back a wee bit, Provost, there? Because I wasn't referring to that paper that we heard this morning. I was referring at the PRS to the actual joint federation letter that was submitted months ago against any new major infrastructure, and that was signed by, I think, 14 of the 15 community councils, and that paper was the part of the presentation papers.
Mr Arnstoff.
Provost, just to reassure Councillor Pottinger that the reference document was referred to in the evidence report, so it was picked up, although it wasn't sent direct, it went to a separate body, it was picked up and relayed to the planning service, it was picked up in the evidence report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Snail.
Thank you very much, Provost. This morning we had a very interesting presentation from the community councils, and I think it's very unwise for us to trample over them completely and ignore everything they're saying. We were talking, I think, apples and oranges. Peter Arnsworth and his team have a very clinical way of looking at things that are absolutely doable and possible. Stephen Liddell, however, produced numbers which are also found in official documents, which have been somewhat rubbished here on the grounds that, well, I know one site that's impossible to develop, therefore absolutely all of these will not happen. But on a probabilistic basis, we are left with the position that the 45% that was argued probably is somewhere between 24%, which I think Mr Arnsdorf has led as the increase that we're predicting, and 45%. So somewhere in the middle. But we do know the number is going to be bigger than the number we thought it was going to be. And you may say, well, don't count windfall, don't count brownfield, etc. But the fact is, however these houses arise, the costs of infrastructure, the costs of a school place arise as well. So the risks are on the higher end than the numbers that we were shown and voted on at the Planning Committee. One of my problems with the statement, which I do respect, that additional growth should bring along with it all the associated infrastructure. The simple fact is that developer contributions are not set at high enough level for that to be the case. If we're going to have 2,000 extra houses, and I think that number is the robust one from the decisions that have been made, that's going to mean at least another secondary school, at least 2 new primary schools. We've got the question of GP surgeries, which is somewhat outside of our control, and all the additional costs of servicing in terms of rubbish collection, maintenance of roads, and all of that. I don't see any sign that we as a council have had a robust model taken through David Gladman's department, showing us exactly how much those 2,000 houses are going to cost us. And until we know that, I don't think we can make a decision to increase beyond the original Development Plan 1 numbers that we have, which is plenty enough to be going on with, as we know very few of these have actually been developed.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smale. Okay, so we have the paper moved by Councillor Parry, seconded. Councillor Smale.
I would like to move against the adoption of the paper at the current time.
Thank you. We have the paper moved by Councillor Parry, seconded by Councillor Milligan.
Can I just clarify,
yes, of course.
If Councillor Parry is agreeing that it is the minimum amount of houses?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so we're quite happy that it's for the minimum amount of houses. Councillor Smale?
I misinterpreted that the decision, which I think was an extra 2,000 taken at Planning Committee, was the one that was being brought forward. Have we changed our position on that? I apologise, I have not picked that up. Okay, so the motion is the status quo, in which case I withdraw my objection.
Thank you. Is anyone otherwise minded? No, Mr Arnstoff.
I just want to be crystal clear, Provost, in terms of the numbers. In terms of MPF 4, there's a requirement to set a target of what was referred to as MAFLA Plus, so that could be just MAFLA Plus 1 unit, but that's the target was 8,850 plus the 1. That's the lowest bar, so that's the figure.
That's what we're going with, isn't it, Councillor Parry? That was my understanding. Yes.
Thank you.
We're all happy with that. Excellent. Okay, thank you.